Before we get started on this episode, I've got to let you know that nothing in this episode should be taken as financial advice, and make sure you speak to a professional if you have any further questions. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Talk Twenties podcast. And we are down in London, Talk Twenties on tour. We have the most beautiful backdrop of London behind us for this episode. We're super, super lucky to be in our headline sponsors, Zopa's offices. It looks amazing. We could have come to London and recorded in a tiny little box studio, but why would we do that when we've got this insane view? So it is absolutely gorgeous here. If you guys have never heard of Zopa before, then you might want to go and check them out. They are one of the UK's leading digital banks, and they're all about simple, fair and easy to use financial products. You can download their app by searching Zopa on the App Store. That's ZOPA, #ad. Today, I'm joined in the studio by Tanvi, Shah. She is a content creator and presenter, and we're going to be talking all about the creator economy today, what it takes to be a creator, what it takes to succeed as a creator, and how to navigate from corporate life into being a creator. And I'm really excited to have this discussion. So hello, Tanvi, welcome to the podcast. Whoop, whoop. You are absolutely amazing, because we were hoping to get you up to Liverpool at some stage, and then we said, Tanvi, someone has been not very well and they couldn't make today's recording, and we messaged you, we were like, I can do tomorrow, which is great.
Yeah, I made myself available because it's worth it.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And obviously it would have been great to have you up in Liverpool, and maybe you have to come up some other time, just for lols. Just for lols. But yeah, it was great to get you in the studio today. And I'm excited to have this conversation because I think definitely you're hearing it coming through school. I remember I used to be a teacher. You're hearing a lot of young people say, I want to be a creator. I want to grow up and I want to do content creation full time. Or people are starting it as a side hustle and then thinking, maybe I can make this my full-time gig. And you are someone who's done that, right?
Literally that. I mean, even I went to a school a couple months ago, and they are four-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and you ask them to put their hands up and like what job they want to be when they're older. Do they know what a content creator is? And like 50% of that room said that they want to be an influencer or a content creator, which is crazy because when we were like that age, that didn't even exist. It didn't exist. And it's definitely an industry that is growing more and more by the day. But now it is to the point where you can obviously make a complete career, full-time living off it. And that is exactly what I do now.
So for you then, what led you into content creation?
It was definitely something I stumbled into, wasn't intentional at all. Never thought I would be someone who would want to put themselves in front of a camera or on the radio or anything like that. I literally started my career in finance. So I did economics at university. I went down that like traditional path, did a graduate scheme at a Big Four. I qualified as a chartered accountant. Like I did all the things my parents wanted me to do.
I bet they were absolutely chuffed to bits with
they
you.
were like, my daughter's an accountant. Like they had that flex. And then when lockdown happened, obviously I was working from home more. I had more time on my hands. And I was actually working a role that, to be honest, I was struggling with. One, because we were working from home, but two, the hours were just so long. And I started using my social media as a platform, as an outlet to share my experiences, just almost as therapy for myself. But then the minute I started doing that, more and more people started to be able to relate to what I was going through as like a young corporate woman. And as I could see that it was benefiting other people, I just started creating more and more content, and slowly my accounts blew up. And then I ventured into all other forms of content like fitness, fashion, lifestyle. And yeah, here we are today. So it's a complete accident, but one that I don't regret at all.
What do you think it was about your content that people were relating to? Because I think we all have perceptions of like what a corporate career looks like or is perceived to be. What was your actual experience and what were you putting out on social media that people were thinking, oh my gosh, she's I can relate so much. She's like speaking my mind.
At the time when I was going to start my graduate scheme, everything I saw online and like the careers fairs really romanticized the corporate job. It's basically where you want to end up if you did economics at university or any degree really. If you were thinking of going into banking and finance, the corporate world was this fantasy. And my content was just honest. Some days were good, some days were hard, some days were very long, and sometimes my hours were extortionate for the pay I was getting. And I think the reason why people resonated with my content so much is because it was real, it was relatable, and it was the truth. And a lot of that wasn't out there. I was basically saying everything that the firms didn't want me to say, but I felt like it was important to use my platform to talk about it.
So taking it back to that corporate like experience, you stepped out of university, went straight into like a graduate scheme at one of the big four. What was your experience? There might be a lot of our listeners here who might have experienced that too and could probably like really benefit from hearing your story.
Yeah, so my graduate scheme was 3 years, and I say this all the time, even though I left and by the end of it, I was a walking zombie. My mental health was down the drain. For 2.5 years, I had the best time because being on a graduate scheme at a big four, like everyone's so young, you're learning so much, you're part of a big team, there's so many socials, you're in London, like you're living the dream. I think where it went downhill was towards the end, we were in lockdown. We had a new client. It was an investment bank, one of the largest investment banks in the world. And I was on a really difficult niche part of the team, which I just struggled with. I was working 18 hours a day for about 3 to 4 months straight. And just like as an example, we came in on the first working day of January and they basically sat us down in this room, a senior partner who was on that client. And he just said, you're going to have to give up your weekends for the next 4 months. And like, that's just a rule, no questions asked. We had these things called non-negotiables, and that would be 1 day a week that we were allowed to leave the office before 6 o'clock. After that, it's like you're having dinner at the office, you're getting an Uber home. I would be home after midnight multiple times a week. And so it was at that point where I just thought, my mental health should not be compromised for a job. Like no job is worth that. It doesn't matter about the job status, the title, the firm's name, how much money you're making, which at a big four isn't that even that much relative to other firms. And so I decided to make the decision to leave. Ironically, I actually left the big four to go to another big four, but I moved out of audit into consultancy where I had much more of a work-life balance. And I think that was a really good decision for me at that time.
I don't know if this is related at all, but I watched a TV program called Industry that was
I've seen it
on BBC. If any of our listeners have watched that or haven't watched it, I loved it. It was a really interesting show. Is that the reality? Because it alludes to a lot of things you're saying. As soon as you were like talking about it, I was like, it's just reminded me of that show I watched. Was it like that?
Do you know what? Industry is based around investment banking, sales and trading, which is very different to what I was doing. So I can only talk from my experience, which was actually finance, and it was more capital markets. So in that, you see a lot of kind of drugs, alcohol, behavior that you wouldn't really, you would expect from the banking world. I think I had a different experience where, we went for socials all the time. Yes, we went to pubs, we drank alcohol, but I never ever came across a situation that I felt like I was compromising my health or doing something I didn't want to do. So I think it's very different to industry. However, I know people in banking who share those exact experiences. Like that does happen. I would say predominantly men, but my experience, thankfully, was different to that.
Which is an interesting thing because I think obviously with these things that are put out there, you kind of want to understand like what is actually like true and whether people are actually having those experiences. So you moved from one big four to another big four. What then kind of led you down the path that you are now?
Yeah, so when I moved into consulting at this other big four, I had a little bit of a presence on social media, but it wasn't anything huge. I wasn't really a name that was well known. And then as I started creating content and as people were resonating with it, I did grow quite rapidly. I then jumped on TikTok. I started a YouTube channel and I really started taking content creation seriously. And I know like you've probably heard this before, but content creation isn't a joke. Like it's a full-on job.
Yeah.
You wear about 50 gajillion hats on at one time. And I think this was the phase where I was just learning. Like I was upskilling all of these different skills that I never used before, whether it was photo editing, video editing, learning how to script a reel, a TikTok, just things that like someone who works in the big four would not know how to do. So I think for the next year, I just spent really learning and growing my platforms. And then there were a few kind of key milestones that happened that really put things into perspective for me. One was being offered a radio show on the BBC. So the head of the Asian network reached out to me and really wanted me to come on because he felt like my voice was powerful and people were listening. And that was like crazy to me because I had no presenting experience. I'd never been on any mainstream media broadcasting, and I had my own show on the BBC. So that was incredible. I then hosted a concert for like 6,000 people. I also appeared on the billboard for Samsung in the Piccadilly Circus, and I was still working full time at this point. And then I just sat down one day and I was like, I'm doing all these things, but I'm also having to say no to so many cool opportunities because Monday to Friday is in the office. So then I think I just got to a point, and to be honest, it was quite a quick decision. It wasn't something I'd been thinking about for a long time, where I just thought, do you know what? I'm 25 years old. I still live at home. I'm comfortable enough to take a risk. So I decided to quit my job. I handed my resignation in. I worked the leave that I had. And then that was it. A year later, here we are. And I'm a full-time content creator, which is crazy.
And how has that year been for you?
Look, I'd be lying if I said, yeah, I'm living my dream and it was the best decision I ever made. But I definitely don't regret it. It's been a really interesting year. I've done incredible campaigns. I've had opportunities I never would have had if I didn't quit my job. I've met people. I've traveled the world. I've been flown to New York. I'm going to America next week to host an exhibition. So things like that absolutely couldn't have done if I stayed in my job. But also it is terrifying. In the grand scheme of things, a year isn't that long. And I gave myself 2 years after quitting my job to be at a certain point where I'm comfortable enough to continue doing it. And I'm still in that phase. Like, I'm still growing. I still have ups and downs and I'm still learning. I do miss having like a stable income. I miss having a team around me that I can work with every day because sometimes I'm just completely by myself. So there are things I miss, but ultimately the pros have outweighed the cons.
I guess we're at Zopa's offices, so it'd be kind of strange not to talk about finance side of content creation. How do you find that? Like, because obviously you just alluded to it there. You literally just said like, it's difficult because you've not got that steady pay and income. And also we were chatting a little bit before about how difficult it is to know what to pitch yourself as and rates and stuff like that when you become a content creator. How have you found that side of things? With the cost of living crisis in the UK, we are all feeling the pinch. That's why we've teamed up with our sponsors, Zopa Bank, to help our listeners understand their finances better. If you're worried about your financial situation, you may want to download the Zopa app and check out their borrowing power tool. It'll give you a clear view of how Zopa see your financial health with a simple 1 to 10 rating, with 10 being that your financial health is in good shape. With this knowledge, you'll have a greater understanding of your financial resilience, and if your score is not a 10, it'll give you personalized tips on what you need to do to improve your score over time. Head to your app store and search Zopa Bank.
Yeah, it's still a massive learning curve and something that I wish I could sit here and say, if you have X amount of followers, you should be charging X amount.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it works. There's so many other variables and factors like engagement rates. Just there's so much that goes into it. And at the beginning, trust me, I was undercharging and I've learned the hard way, and I probably still am when I'm doing it on my own. But I quit my job when I was matching my income from my side hustle more than my corporate job. I was making more on the side than I was in something full-time. And it was at that point that I realized how lucrative the social media industry is and how I actually can be quite comfortable making money off this. You do have to know what you're doing and you do have to be sensible and understand how to negotiate and read contracts. But in terms of a finance perspective, there's so much potential in this market, but it's a huge learning curve and I'm still learning.
Do you think there's still space in this industry for more people? Because it's getting busier and busier by the day. We're seeing new content creators pop up. What are we on, like season 9 of like Love Island now, which just seems, and any reality show just seems to churn out new content creators, never mind all the Netflix ones and all those kinds of stuff. Do you think there is more space for more creators?
The market is so saturated, let's be honest. And I think if you want to just take pretty pictures of yourself, living your high life, not saying anything meaningful and just like want to gain followers and be famous, I think it's really hard to do that now because it's so saturated. However, if you have a voice and you're standing up for something important, you're raising awareness for something you believe in, and you really make a name for yourself and carve out your niche, being nothing but yourself, I definitely think there's still so much room, because even though the number of creators are growing, the need for content creators and brands are also understanding the importance of content creators. All of that is growing too. There's still so much investment being made into the creator economy. And I still think we're not even close to being at its peak. So I definitely think there's still so much room.
When you think of every single brand in the world, there are absolutely millions and millions of them, right? And every single one of them at some point is going to dabble in social media and therefore likely content creation themselves. So whether you're working on the side of creating it for brands in-house, or whether you're a content creator and you're charging fees and stuff like that, content creation is such a huge part of everyday life now. It seeps into everything.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I think there's probably still so much more space for that, but absolutely about on the authenticity piece, like it really needs to feel like you have a special mission and that you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, and I think brands are also understanding the importance of someone having built like a very engaged community around them, because adverts are old. Like being on a bus or being on the TV, like no one can actually relate to what's going on. But if you can have access to an individual who people actually know, like personal things about, they feel like they have a relationship with them and they're promoting a product or service, like the chances of that converting into a sale are so much higher because they've got that connection. So I think brands are understanding that, and it's so important. And then you also forget with content creators, like they are the model, the photographer, the video editor, the lighting guy, the sound guy, like they're all in one person. So brands are also streamlining that process by using creators. They're probably cutting out so many middlemen costs by doing so. And I think the sooner brands understand that, like the quicker they're going to reach more success.
That's true, actually, because I think a lot of brands may go, wow, whenever we've pitched out to a creator for a certain campaign and stuff like that, they've quoted a crazy amount of fees. How on earth can they charge? They must be making an absolute killing. But I think the point that you just made there is a really important one. Like you literally are getting so many different things. If you try to do it in-house with loads of different specialists, that would cost them thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds probably.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many benefits using creators. And I think what people don't see is that it's also like days of work, planning, scripting, coming up with the concept, you're filming. You might then have your own cost as a creator to outsource certain things. And then you've got to go through the whole editing approval process. So it's not just like a 1 hour job. It takes days to come up with a campaign.
Absolutely. Specifically, we want to chat a little bit more about being a South Asian woman in content creation and also in the corporate world as well. How has your experience been?
I think something that I didn't realise is there's actually so much common ground just between being a South Asian in corporate and as a creator. I think growing up in the UK, I was born and raised in London, but my parents are from East Africa and my grandparents are from India. So they've sacrificed a lot, basically, because of the British Empire. They've moved across 3 continents over 3 generations. And me being in the UK and almost growing up as this like British South Asian and trying to find that identity of the hybrid between the two has always been something that's really hard, and I know a lot of people can relate to. And especially when you are South Asian, you almost get given like 5 choices of career paths. Like you're either a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, an engineer, or an accountant. And doing something non-traditional isn't quite as common. It's getting better, but it's not quite as common. So one, I think making the shift was really hard because my parents, whilst being super supportive, obviously would have much preferred me to stay in like a financially stable career that has some form of status to it, and they know they don't have to worry, whereas now it's a lot scarier for them. But 2, I think being a minority, both in the corporate and creative, was something I struggled with because there are so many nuances, culture differences, just things that not everyone can relate to and you're constantly having to overcome. When I was at my Big 4 firm, I founded the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And the biggest thing I learned from that was that whilst everyone has good intentions, or most people have good intentions, there's still so many things that people who aren't an ethnic minority don't understand or can't relate to, or they'll say things like microaggressions that are subtle but not intentional. So I still think we have such a long way to go. And I think as an Indian woman, I realised all of these things both in corporate and as a creator. The biggest challenge I think as a content creator is that there just isn't enough people that look like me doing it. different budgets are allocated for people of colour. Campaigns are way more likely to be given to white people just because they have larger audiences, or they're more marketable because they look like more of their audience. I've been at shoots before where the white counterparts are offered more money than the people of colour. And these are facts. These are not things that I think exist. I have evidence. I've seen it firsthand. And that's now what we're challenged with, and we're having to overcome. And it's just having equality of opportunity, and then equality of income, and then everything else that comes with that. As a person of colour, as a content creator, is still a massive problem.
You are a powerhouse. You're literally taking on the world. Like, I absolutely love that. Like, especially with like the whole D&I, like the committee that you set up in your Big Four firm. What were the plans that you set out that you wanted to see in your organisation that maybe people listening now could say, this is what we need to do in our organisation?
Yeah, I feel like prior to that, my firm, it's very a tick box exercise with corporates. A lot of the time they want to make sure they have X amount of people that look like this just so that they fill a quota. But really, in practice, they're not actively doing things every day that make their employees feel seen and feel heard, and making sure that they're able to thrive in their work at their most optimum level. And that is really what firms need to achieve, is that making sure every single one of the people that works with them feels as though they can bring themselves to work and they can bring their best selves to work. So whether that is understanding the ways in which they work might be different to what is traditionally taking place at the firm, understanding their culture, understanding if there's a language barrier, things like just like learning about one's religion, and just not having socials revolving around alcohol because some people might not drink. It's just showing that you care about your employees and you're actively doing little things every day to make them feel included and seen, which I don't think we see enough of.
That's a really great answer. And I think there's definitely more that every company can do in that degree. 100%. One of the things I also wanted to chat to you about was there's like a perception, I think, when it comes to creators, like, it's not a real job. Like, go out and get a real job. And sometimes even I catch myself saying it about the company that I run. I work all the time, and it's sometimes like very, very busy and long days. We run events, we host podcasts, but just because it looks fun in some ways to some people, a lot of people go, it's not really a real job, is it? That's like, it's not. Do you get that as well?
Yeah, I get it all the time, and I've given up fighting it, I'll be honest, because at the end of the day, I'm like, look, I pay my bills, you pay yours. We'll stay in our own lane and leave it at that.
Good, yeah.
But I understand why people think it, because not everyone is in a job they enjoy. And when they're not, they project it onto people that are. And I think that it's a massive lesson for everyone. That, like, there are so many different job roles that exist out there. And if you don't like what you're doing, go and find something you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people truly don't realise how much hard work and how many hours go into this job. And it very much is a real job. I think the respect around it is growing, but it's nowhere near as respectable as, oh, he's a doctor or he's a lawyer. And I think I would love to see a world where like content creators are respected. And ultimately, like, the beauty of content creation is that you have the flexibility to work when you want and do what you want. And isn't that the dream? Like, isn't that way more aspirational than just being stuck in a role where you have no say what you do every day and who you answer to? So yeah.
You said that your parents were like a little bit like when you first, like, have they got better? Do they get it a bit more now? Like,
yeah, I mean, my dad was the first person to tell me, and this is when I was doing it as a side hustle, like, why are you not charging for your time? Like, I used to do so much pro bono, and I know people hate to hear that, but it's just because it was fun and just because it was lockdown. I didn't have anything else to do, and I just wanted to build up my portfolio. But he was the one that was like, you should be making money off this. Like, this is a job, and
it's
you're
funny.
giving
My
up time.
dad told me off for charging too little. Quoting too little the other day.
I mean, he's a businessman.
I said my rates to him, and he said the same thing. He was like, that seems very low. And I was like, Dad, like, a year ago, I'd absolutely killed for that. That's like 2 months of what I would be earning beforehand.
It's funny that they are the ones that like challenge us, but then they're also like our biggest cheerleaders, which I love. I love that perspective from my dad. But yeah, now they totally get it. They see firsthand like what I'm doing every day, like the things I've achieved, being on a billboard, like they're driving their car and they hear me on the radio. Like, those are things they know I wouldn't have been able to do if I just stuck to finance. So they definitely get it now. But they're always asking me, like, are you winning? Are you okay? Like, do you need anything?
Are you winning? I love that.
My dad always says, are you winning? And I think he just wants to know that I'm stable and secure.
Yeah, I love that. And there's nothing wrong with like putting that like front and foremost in terms of like, I think a lot with stability, especially financially, it comes with a lot of like peace and tranquility in terms of your mental health as well. So I think there's never a bad thing to kind of like really push for that, because I think, you know, otherwise it can lead to like quite a lot of stress and it's not necessary all the time.
Yeah, totally.
In terms of being online all the time, if you're on TikTok, you'll know there's people who love to comment, and there's a lot of hate that can sometimes happen on social media.
Yeah.
How has that been for you?
I think something that people don't talk about, as a South Asian creator, we get more hate from our own community than anyone else. We love to drag our own community when we are succeeding, which sucks. Like that's the one thing I would change about this community, is that we would actually empower and uplift each other. We are the biggest reason why we don't progress and help each other and elevate each other to succeed in all sorts of careers. So it has been hard. Like I've struggled with so much hate, especially from women that look exactly like me, which is sad because conversely, my biggest audience and the people that support me the most are people that look like me. So it isn't nice. And I think when you do put yourself out there, you obviously understand that people have a right to their opinion and they're going to judge you. But I think the sad thing is that you get judged for people who don't know you, people who've never had a conversation with you, people who will judge you off like one thing you've ever said or the way you choose to live your life, and they don't know anything about you or the history, where you've come from, the things you've faced and struggled with as well. So I think that's what I find frustrating, because I'm like a people pleaser. I want everyone to like me. I hate it when I'm like, oh my God, does she not like me? Like, what did I do to her? And to have so many people on the internet that don't know me not like me for any reason, I think that's hard. But at the same time, like, you've got to have thick skin and block it out and almost be numb to it at this point, because you just won't succeed if you stop creating content because of what other people think.
Do you think there's a specific reason why sometimes it is your own community that don't really get it and will give you that hate back?
I think, especially in the UK, people either have been brought up in a very modern, liberal way, and they've had the privilege of going to certain schools or being able to go clubbing or drinking alcohol or whatever it might be from a social setting. And unfortunately, some people's parents are a lot more stricter. They are not allowed to do certain things. They're not allowed to go out with certain people after certain times. And I think when you can so visibly see people living a life that you never had or you wanted on the internet, like being able to quit your job and do something completely non-traditional, that hate is a projection of their own unhappiness and things that they didn't have growing up or weren't able to experience. And that's also how I've come to terms with it. Like, it's not even their fault. It's just the way that they've been brought up, or it's things that they're unhappy about in their own lives that they're then taking out on me. So I think that's a particular problem with the South Asian community.
And do you think that's probably why we're not seeing as many young women go into it as well, young South Asian women?
I think it's a bit of both internally, in terms of they're maybe not supported by their own family and friends to do it, so it's much scarier to do. But also I think just the opportunities aren't there. Like, the representation isn't there for them to see people that are doing it, that they think, oh, I can do it too. And from a brand's perspective, like, if they're not getting the opportunities the same way other people would, then why would they try and continue a career in something that they know they're not being treated fairly in? So I think there's two sides to it.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to chat to you a little bit more about your 20s in general and how they have been. We always love to hear people's adulting failure stories. So the things that they've done in their adult life, they think, oh my God, I completely messed up. Sometimes they're funny. Sometimes they're really like scary and you learn a really huge lesson from them. Like, is there anything that springs to mind when you think about your biggest adulting failure?
There's so much. Like, I've made so many mistakes. I think a lot of it revolves around maybe friendships and relationships. I think, like, in your 20s, you're so determined to be surrounded by so many people, have loads of friends, feel popular. Like, I used to gain pleasure from feeling popular, and that's where I would get my validation from. And I'd end up being friends with people that weren't good friends. Like, they were using me for my network, or they would only come out with me when I wanted to go out and drink with them, not when I wanted a night in and just to have a pizza. So I think I surrounded myself with so many of the wrong people, and I learned the hard way, don't get me wrong, because they drop you like that when they no longer need you. But I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned, is like, people come and go, but like knowing who I want in my life and being selective with who I can really trust and the circle I have. I think like that has been the biggest lesson.
How have your friendship changed? Because I think it's a really important topic to talk about in your 20s, because friendships change so much. How have they changed for you from like when you were like a teenager to like stepping out into adult life? Like what's been the difference? Because mine has changed massively.
Yeah, my friendships have changed so much. I've got a really core group of friends who I've known my whole life, and I'm really, really lucky to have them. And I've grown up around them. But I think I saw the biggest changes when like I went to university, and then you kind of lose touch with all your school friends, and it's like you really see who's making an effort and who cares to maintain a friendship. And then I saw the biggest jump when I was in corporate, and I had so many friends around me that were in like 9-to-5 jobs, working in like things that they could relate to with me, and we'd go out for dinners and drinks after. The biggest change I saw was when I went from a corporate to a creative, and people just didn't get it. People didn't support me. People could no longer relate to what I was doing. We didn't have anything in common. And I just felt like the people that supported me the most were like strangers online versus people who I thought were my friends, who I'd grown up with since day one. And I noticed like that was the biggest kind of realization in life, is that, and there's this quote, we see it all the time, when you start on the same platform in the same place as someone, and then you somehow go and do something crazy and different, and you're elevated to this point, they don't like it and they can no longer relate to what you're doing. Like that's when loads of my friendships kind of failed. And now I'm in the creator industry. I have so many creative friends, but at the same time, I'm so skeptical with who I choose to associate with and who I want to collaborate with and create content with, because I've again had bad experiences where people have used me for my followers or to gain access to X, Y, Z. And then when they no longer need me, just stop speaking to me. So again, it's an industry where people are so usy and you have to be so careful. So I'm still learning, but I'm really happy with the small tight-knit circle that I have now.
Yeah, I think that's true for like any person in their 20s as well. It's like find your circle, the people who you can rely on, the people that you can trust, and know who they are, and like know who you can turn to when something isn't going right and stuff like that. The people who be there. Usually there'll be certain people who you'll just know that like, oh my God, I won't go to them in a crisis.
No,
like,
and you know, you can see the signals and the red flags in friends. And like when I was young, I used to be like, yeah, it's fine, I just want friends. But now like when I see red flags, like I recognize it and I just immediately step back.
Yeah.
And I'm just at a point now, like I'd rather have 3 like incredible friends than 50 really bad ones.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
What have your friends been like from when you were younger? Because like I got a message the other day from someone who I used to be really, really close to when I was younger. And it was honestly like, I'm just seeing everything they're doing with Talk 20s and it just looks amazing. Like, I just want to say like, I'm so proud of you. Like one day I hope to be doing something big enough to be able to come on the podcast and stuff like that. So I was like, what? This person is thinking like this. It was a really lovely message to receive, but it kind of acknowledged the fact that we'd kind of like, they'd not put enough effort in on their side and now they would guess like to. Like, I think it's always a strange one when friends come like
running back
up. I was like, I don't know how to feel about this.
I feel a bit weird about it too, because I've drifted from so many people over the years, as you do. And then when they see you thriving and winning and they want a part of it, that's when they come running back. And I've seen it time and time again. Like I used to be so nice, too nice. Honestly, I used to be way too nice to people. I'd be like, yes, let me know how I can help you. Let me call you. Let me reply to this message. Like people used to literally DM me essays in my inbox, like, I'm going through this, or can you help me start this business? And I would literally do everything I possibly could. But then I realized like, my time is valuable and my peace is valuable. And if this person is only popping up with me when they need something, that's not really someone I have to answer to. And I can set those boundaries for myself. So yeah, I've definitely got better at like saying no and setting boundaries, because as much as it's nice to be nice, you end up neglecting yourself.
100%. And I think, yeah, you kind of like, no friendship is ever like 50-50 balance on like win and lose or give and receive. I don't know what the right words would be to use. Like, it's never going to be exactly 50-50, but it should never ever get to like 10% or anything. Like it should never be that like one person is giving and the other person is taking.
Yeah, and I think with friendships, it's all about just like open communication. I've learned that. Like I used to find it really hard when something annoyed me or I felt like I was putting in more effort than them. But I just think if you can have a conversation as adults in a really calm and mature way, then you can address it and move on. Unfortunately, a lot of the times when you do bring things up, people don't like it, and that's when friendships go wrong. But then ultimately those are not the friends you want. So
Absolutely. We always talk on the Talk 20s podcast how like nobody, no matter what age they are, nobody's perfect. Everyone's working through something. Everyone's got their own things going on. Despite what you see on social media, you might think they have all figured out. They absolutely do not below the surface. And we want to like debunk that myth. And we want to talk about all the things that we're currently struggling with right now. So you, someone that people might look up to, I'd love to know if there's anything that's holding you back right now that you feel is a personal struggle or ambition that you are trying to like get over, if that makes sense.
It's quite simple, and this is something we've not even spoken about. I don't know how we've not touched on it, but I'm super sporty. Like I've played sports my whole life.
Yeah.
I was a semi-professional netballer.
Oh, wow.
I played hockey for the south of England. And then 5 years ago, I tore my ACL. So I had to have a knee reconstruction surgery. And like, it's the most difficult thing where you basically have to teach yourself how to walk again. And I did it. And I got back onto the court and everything was good. And then last year I did it again and I did it to my other leg.
Oh
so
my gosh.
Currently I've got 6 metal screws in both my knees holding my ligaments together. All because I just want to get back to the one thing that I love doing, the one thing that is for my mental health, and that is to exercise and play sports. And unfortunately, like it's not in a place where I can. Played a match, something went wrong, and now I struggle to walk like long distances. And as someone who used to be like a semi-professional athlete, it's something I struggle with every single day. And because I don't have my mental outlet, that then has a domino effect on so many other things. So that's something I need to get checked and sorted and make a priority. Yeah. But like it's such a struggle every day because like being physically unable to do something can impact like so many other elements of my life.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry to hear that's happened to you because like when you know that is like literally like the crux of like someone's happiness, to see it like taken away unfairly is never nice.
Yeah.
For you then, like what do you think, like have you found other ways and outlets that can make you feel the same thing, or is it really like you just want to play team sports because it just sounds like you do?
I know the orthopedic team are like, Tanvi, we're gonna have to sit you down. You might have to give up netball.
Oh.
And honestly, it's really hard to hear, but like I'm still fortunate that I have both my legs and I have both my feet and I can walk. So I'm like in the process of figuring out like what's my next sport? Like, am I gonna get into cricket?
Yeah.
Am I going to be a tennis player?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think I don't want to give up on sports. I just know that realistically, I probably can't keep doing what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up having like a knee replacement, which no one wants at the age of like 20. So yeah, I think I've just got to explore my options and stay positive. Otherwise, yeah, it's not going to end well.
So it's been amazing to chat to you, and we always end the podcast with the same question that we ask every single one of our guests. You're 27 now, and what we like to ask is if you could look back at 20-year-old Tanvi and give her just one piece of advice that would see her through her 20s, you can only have one, what would you say to her?
Don't be such a perfectionist, because when I was 20, I wanted to be married by 27, have my first kid by 30, have a property by then, and live in this happy family. And that shit just goes out the window. Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah,
okay.
No props.
That shit, honestly, just put it out the window, because you end up placing so much pressure on yourself to achieve all these milestones that you see online that your family and society has placed on you. And then you just end up so unhappy. So stop being perfectionist, throw all those expectations out the window and just do what makes you happy.
Some wise advice there. Thank you so much. It's been so amazing to chat to you. I think there's big things coming for the creator economy. I know you're working on some really exciting projects at this moment in time. I don't know if you're able to share.
Yeah, so we've started the Creator Space, and it's basically a whole platform and networking space for creators to come, knowledge share, network, make friends, and just grow together as creators.
And it's amazing that we've had this conversation. I'm sure many people find it really, really helpful. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been great to chat.
Thanks for having me.